I want to quote one of your all-time most popular tweets. When Bitcoin gets to 150,000, I'll buy the Hamptons and convert it to a sleepaway camp for kids, working farms, and low-cost housing. What inspired you to write that one?
Well, I can't take all the credit. Friends of mine and I, we have a little group chat, and we were just, talking about random things for the summer, in the hope that the pandemic eases. And one of my friends, Rob Goldberg, actually was the one that said Champions. And it just kind of like set off a light bulb. And then I just wrote it and I kind of published it. It's very tongue in cheek. I mean, I did another one which said, like, I think when Bitcoin gets to 40,000 or 100,000, I'm going to buy Goldman Sachs and rename it Chamath Sachs. These are all jokes. This is the part of my personality that some folks don't get, which is this is just tongue in cheek. It's just, honestly, I never thought I'd be here. I'm enjoying the ride. Every minute of this feels like a complete dream to me.
I admire you for not taking yourself too seriously. The Bitcoin thing, however, is very serious.
Yeah.
North of $40,000. So it's not 150, you can't buy the Hamptons yet. It's not 100, you can't buy Goldman Sachs yet. But
can I tell you something about Bitcoin, which is so important? So I think Bitcoin is very important because it just shows the fragility of, the traditional financial infrastructure. And if you just look at the quantity and the size of like the M2 money supply as an example, the real question that I think people should be asking ourselves is, okay, if Bitcoin becomes a de facto reserve currency that basically displaces gold, what replaces the US dollar? And here's where, if you want to just bear with me for a second, it's not Bitcoin that replaces the US dollar. It is a stable coin. And what does all of that mean? In less fancy language, there are companies around the world that are replacing one fixed US dollar with one digital token of a US dollar. And by simply making that small abstraction, they're able to completely build financial rails that didn't exist before. On-ramps and off-ramps to trading, to asset management, to banking, to payments processing. There's a revolution happening. It's not felt as much in the United States because people don't see it because the financial services infrastructure is so robust. But when you look at the developing world, and if you look in any market where there is any form of currency manipulation or currency instability, that's the future. And so, Bitcoin is a canary in a coal mine for a completely virtual, largely anonymous, and we can debate whether that's good or not, financial reality. And so, I think that it's a very important trend that's worth understanding. The other thing is, so many of the dislocations that we've seen won't happen anymore when we go on those rails. So, going back to this whole GameStop debacle, as I've learned more, and as you probably know now too, a lot of this has to do with the arcane way in which stocks are settled. And what I learned was we used to have a T+3, after the trading day, 3 days later is when you'd settle. And it was moving heaven and earth, crying and screaming to move companies to go to T+2. Well, if you're running a stable coin or, smart contracts on top of Ethereum, all of this next generation infrastructure, this is T+0, right? You're settling things in a nanosecond. And that's really good for everybody.
My whole view with Bitcoin was always that it's much better to be pragmatic and lay out a moderate case, which is that it's a hedge in a portfolio against the sort of traditionalist financial infrastructure. And so many people would get mad because they would anchor on this extremist view that it had to be everything. It had to be the solution and panacea to everything. The problem with that view is that that's just not how you maximize demand, right? When you think about products that really get to scale, there's a simplicity, and what that simplicity gives is people a very simple decision to make. Do I want to use this or do I not want to use it? And so if you want, for example, Bitcoin to get to mass market scale, the most powerful thing that you can do is describe it in simple, pragmatic terms that don't require zealous belief. And so it's just an example to me that sort of reinforces this idea that extremism never wins. And kind of like centrism is sort of the value maximizing function.
Yeah, because when I'm looking at that whole world, I see all of the other platforms, blockchains, tokens. And I'm just thinking, okay, well, here's a big, diverse, deep, rich universe. And I can't just see it being about Bitcoin. Yes, Bitcoin's this great asset and it's a wonderful gift for us all. And thank you very much. And we can all make some money. But this whole space, okay, that's super interesting to me because it is anti-fragile in its overall way, and it offers a whole bunch of solutions to the problem of finance, which is a total shit show.
It's true. It just requires sort of like a de-escalated, like I find that a lot of people in Bitcoin, and it's so funny because like many of them got there well after I did. They're just so arrogant about it. And I don't know, maybe I'm just dumber, but like, I just don't understand why people need to believe so much versus, view it more pragmatically and unemotionally, because I think they'll find more success in the more unemotional, treatment of what it is. So like another example is like the entire DeFi movement. I got laughed at because somebody asked me, Laura Shin asked me what DeFi was. And I was like, I have no idea, but I own Bitcoin. And I was just telling the truth, which is like, I don't have the time to learn about all this stuff. And, at some point somebody will explain it to me and I'll know a little bit better, but it's not to say that it's not important, but it is to say that everything has a time and place. And if we are going to focus our energies on making Bitcoin mass market and scale, we have to dial down this zealous rhetoric and dial up pragmatist rhetoric. Pragmatist rhetoric is what will get your mother and your grandmother to have Bitcoin in their wallets.
That's right. I love Michael Saylor, and his interview's been amazing, and he's on Real Vision, but he speaks in a term that no corporate treasurer understands. They want to hear about Hornet's Nest or anything else. They want to hear about diversification of portfolio returns and stuff like that.
So to your point, look, I've started an insurance company that's doing a bunch of very, very esoteric, exotic insurance policies. And, one of the interesting things that I've learned with my co-founder, my partner in this, he's the CEO, I'm just the chairman, but is how many of these corporations view their balance sheets and, how they're buying all kinds of esoteric insurance. And the instant thing, Raoul, that pops to the top of my head is, wow, these guys should also own Bitcoin as something like that. If they're going to own cat bonds and they're going to own business interruption risk insurance and all kinds of, hedges on PMI, my gosh, why don't they own some Bitcoin? Well, it's because the presentation of that idea is done in such a way where they're forced to make a leap too far. And because if you decompose what the treasurer or the CFO is how the lens in which they're making decisions, it's just career risk. Right? It's that old adage. You're never going to get fired for buying IBM, right? And so you're never going to get fired for just having the money sit in a corporate account with earning zero at JP Morgan. Then, pounding your fists on the table for Bitcoin. So what we need is, again, more pragmatism around what it is. I've always found the presentation of the idea as a deeply fundamentally uncorrelated hedge to the existing financial infrastructure to be kind of boring, not that salacious, but very pragmatic and effective.